Gerhard Bloom here, once again looking at the tyranny and the delusions of the social justice movement. So, most of you are undoubtedly aware of the incident with a male pretending to be a woman, school teacher in a Canadian school, right here in the province that I live in, Ontario, Canada. This guy, a ridiculous blonde wig, and artificial breasts the size of watermelons with huge erect nipples. And he's prancing around teaching children in a shop class. Now, you might not be aware, but there's something, men are, to a degree, women are not, prone to paraphilias. Paraphilia is weird sexual kinks and fetishes, right? A guy not attracted to the woman, he's attracted to the shoes. Another paraphilia is autogynephilia. This is where men get a sexual thrill by presenting as a sexually attractive woman, although if you've seen images of this guy, hardly attractive. But undoubtedly, this guy has got autogynephilia. He is getting a sexual thrill out of prancing around in that ridiculous costume. Used to be, you would have to line up outside a tent at a carnival and throw 25 cents in a jar to see something like this. Your kids should not be exposed to this kind of ridiculous parody of womanhood. And you should get your kids, if at all possible, out of the schooling system. The taxpayer is paying more and more for less and less. The United States pays amongst the highest per capita on its students. And as funding has increased over the decades, standards have fallen. And no, this just isn't me being subjective here. There's something called the Program for International Student Assessments, PISA, right? They have tracked academic achievement across the years. And the American student achievement has plummeted. In 2018, for example, 15-year-old American students scored 25th on average in math, science, and reading. Guess who took the number one spot? China. Evidently, nobody told the Chinese kids that math and science were racist, right? Although American kids are being told math is racist, it upholds systems of white privilege and power. As I mentioned before, it also holds up apartment buildings and suspension bridges. Absolute nonsense. And the Chinese kids are eating American students' lunch. They work hard. I taught in China, taught English in China briefly, right? These kids work hard. And the teachers, they work very hard. And they're disciplined. These kids get lots of homework. And the test scores obviously prove they're doing something right. And no, China does not outspend the United States in its schooling. No. So they do far more with far less. This would be bad enough. You paying more and getting less. But that's not entirely true, right? It gets worse, far worse. Instead of filling the kids' heads with nothing, they're filling their heads with poisonous social justice toxicity. And, I had one parent in response to a Facebook post speaking about the schooling system. And she rails at me, do you think my child is going to turn out, poisoned by this? Well, maybe her little Fabergé egg might not be. But something to reflect on here. These teachers have hours over the course of years. And this poisonous ideology, this radical sex and gender ideology, this radical racist ideology, it starts in kindergarten and it's incessant. From grade schools into the university system. It's absolutely everywhere. And your child is being exposed to this. There are countless examples of parents being unable to speak to their children about these sensitive issues, or young adults refusing to speak to their parents because they've been ideologically brainwashed. And what happens when your daughter, at the age of 13 or 14, suddenly discovers she's really a boy, cruelly trapped in a woman's body? And she wants to get her breast cut off and get gender-affirming care, the testosterone or puberty blockers, and parents are being lied to. They are being absolutely lied to. You cannot block puberty and restart it as though it's an on and off switch. No. There will be permanent changes, disfiguring changes to this child's body. And what happens when several years later they realize it's all been a tragic mistake? And this, for young girls, their jawline will have changed, their voice will have deepened, they may no longer be able to have babies, and breasts aren't balloons. They can't simply be replaced with artificial breasts, right? This is live tissues that they're being excised. And a number of hospitals in the United States are performing hysterectomies on children. They're under the age of 18, they're beneath the age of consent, and the Biden administration is attempting to coerce states into this affirming care. It's not affirming, it's a radical denial of gender, right? You don't get to choose your gender. You're born male or female. And bodies are being permanently damaged. And as a parent in one of these left-wing states, you risk having your child taken away from you from social services if you object to having your child undergo this horror show. This needs to stop. And another thing to consider, being exposed to this radical racist ideology, you are going to, if your child is white, have this deep shame about the color of their skin, or a possibility you might not have considered. Your child might grow deeply resentful and hostile at being perpetually race shamed, and your child might just turn out to be some neo-Nazi freak, right? This is a reaction formation, right? In psychology, it's all too common, right? A reaction formation. People do not respond to being race shamed by tucking their tail in and begging for forgiveness. Sooner or later, people get tired. And whites are being discriminated against. This is an obvious fact in employment, where you have preferential hiring or preferential admissions into universities. And now this enlightenment has spread to the Asian community, right? Look at Harvard and its scandal, right? Refusing admittance to Asians who have deserved their place there. They have earned their spot in there. They're not getting admitted because allegedly there's too many Asians, as though Asians were just like a carton of eggs. We need a couple of these and now we got enough, right? We need diversity. I've said this before, I'll likely say it again. Life is not a petting zoo, right? You want diversity, go to a petting zoo, right? At academia and employment, the most qualified person should get the job or the admission, right? And one thing I will also note, that charter schools and school vouchers, this is an opportunity for the poorest to get their kids out of these failing schools and get them some real education. And who fights this? Democrats. The Democrats and the Democratic Party that's been entirely bullied by the teachers' unions. The teachers' unions don't want the competition in the marketplace because very quickly, and The statistics bear this out, right? When you compare the success of students in charter schools against regular public schools, these charter schools children in those schools do much, much better. This includes kids from the poorest socioeconomic brackets. You know, Obama's kids, guess where they went? Public school? Wrong. No. Private schools. Joe Biden's kids, same thing. And Elizabeth Warren. So they don't want your kids having the same advantages that their kids had, right? They want your kids to go to these poisonous, failed public institutions, right? Absolutely shameful. If you can, for God's sakes, get your kids out of these public schools. And be very careful when you start looking at these private schools. Some of the most prestigious and elite private schools have also been co-opted by this poisonous leftist ideology. But you have some power here. Anyways, I hope you'll check out my book, Deconstructing Social Justice. It's available on Amazon. It's not important because I wrote it. I wrote it because the issues could not be more important. And I do, at length, discuss these failing schools. And I will discuss a couple of examples of private black schools where their students had stellar performances compared to their public school counterparts in the same building. And no, these students, these high achieving poor black students, weren't handpicked. They weren't selected on the basis of their mark, poaching the best and the brightest from the public schools. No, it was a lottery system. So absolute lies on the left, and get your kids out of these toxic environments, poisoning their minds, and may very well destroy their bodies. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Bye-bye.